Mr. Tom Bohne. The day is Friday. The date is the 30th of March, 1962. The time is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I am in the office of Mr. Tom Bohne, who is the manager of the Worth Avenue Coffee Shop in Palm Beach. Is that right?
That's right, yes, sir.
Of course, I'm not going to talk to you about the coffee shop. You know that, don't you?
Yes, I don't suppose so.
I'm going to talk to you about Mr. Bradley. First, let's start. I know about his idle hour days, but he started really in the West, didn't he?
They were building the railroads out there, and they're opening up mines, and he used to carry food from the railroads to the mines and provisions. Oh. He had a pack train.
The early snack wagon. Huh?
Yeah, that's what he had, and he said he was making pretty good livelihood out of it. He had a team of 6 mules and a good wagon and harness. And he said that all of a sudden it came up how he became a gambler.
Oh.
And he tells a story that one night he had pitched camp, and a nice spot, he and his partner, and some horsemen rode up, and they said they invited him to join him at the camp that night. So they sat down, they had supper together, and after supper they got out a deck of cards, one of the fellows, horsemen, and he said they started playing 3-card money. And he said before the evening was over, he had lost all of his money and his mule team and his harness and everything.
He was out of business.
He was out of business. So he said from then on he went out of business, and he said he loved to gamble. So as long as he wanted to gamble, he's going to be on the right side of the table. And that's how he started. That's how he became a gambler.
Well, did he open up in the Southwest first?
Yes, he'd go around follow the carnivals.
Oh. Go
from town to town, down to Guadalupe in Mexico during the fiesta down there. And they were always on the road because they couldn't settle too much in one place because the army would chase them out.
Was his game always 3-card money?
Oh no, that's the game he got beat at.
Mm-hmm.
3-card money is a game where the house has a very strong percentage. But he dealt poker and different games.
Did they have blackjack in those days?
Faro was a great game in those days, and
uh-huh.
he had to be pretty clever to deal Faro even. And he was very good with his eye and his hands. So he wandered around, and finally he went to Chicago. And he opened a Bacchus Club up there on Clark Street. And that was his first time he really might say, was in the gambling business as a beach club type.
He had a big place?
He had a small place on Clark Street, but it was large enough to where he could make some money. And then he went down to St. Augustine. And he opened a club up down there. He followed Flagler's Railroad right down to St. Augustine. Mm-hmm. And he'd go from Chicago to he gave up the West after he went to Chicago, because that was more or less small time gambling. And he became interested in racing, which I won't go into because you probably get that from other sources. Mm-hmm. While in St. Augustine, he heard about Palm Beach being opened up. Flagler had his railroad on down here. So he came down to Palm Beach.
Well, was Flagler for him or against him?
I'm going to tell you the story about how he and Mr. Flagler got together.
All right.
So he didn't even know Mr. Flagler when he first came down. He bought a piece of property over where the old beach club stood, and he opened up a casino. And he always believed to serve good food, so he put in a first-class restaurant. And the Ponciano was existing in those days. I don't know too much about what the details, but I've heard him tell the story. And his gambling house was going very well because the people from the Ponciano would come over in the evening and they'd play the roulette and hazard. Those were the only 2 games he had in those days.
Only roulette and hazard.
That's all he had. In fact, he only had the only other game he ever had in the house was Commander Fair.
Uh-huh.
And that was a minor game, which he only just at different times during the season. But roulette was the most important game. So he was operating, and one night he went outside and he found some fellow peeking in his window. So he pulled a gun on him and told him to come down. Asked him who he was, and he said he was a detective from the hotel. He said, "You work for Mr. Flagler?" He said, "Yeah, Mr. Flagler sent me." He said, "Well, you tell Mr. Flagler if he wants to see what I'm operating over here, you come over tomorrow at 10 o'clock or any time he wishes, and I'll be very pleased to take him in and show him around." So the next morning, Mr. Flagler came over and introduced himself, and he and Mr. Bradley saw the casino, saw how it was operated. There was no small-time gambling there. It was just people who could afford to gamble. and they became fast friends from that time on.
But Mr. Flagler, the idea of the casino didn't appeal to him at first. Is that right?
No, he just thought it was a gambling house.
Yeah.
But when he saw the type house that Mr. Bradley ran, or was running, and did run all his life, he felt it would be an attraction for his guests and a source of entertainment.
Well, now let me ask you this: was anybody allowed to gamble there?
No,
Oh.
very strict. Even to the last days, he only wanted people to gamble who could afford to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a rule that a person had to be 26 years of age before they could come into the place, even the dining room. 26 because they'd say they were 22. Thinking 21 was the limit, and then they'd know that they weren't 26. And he was very strict on that. And
was there any rule against people who lived here?
there was a rule: no one who was a resident of the state of Florida could come in. And the reason for that was they might be on a grand jury sometime.
Aha!
And he wanted to avoid having anybody in the club that was a member that could test, that would be on a grand jury or witness in the state.
Well, now, of course, the operation as such was not legal, was it?
No, it was never legal.
Well, now, how did he manage?
Well,
Or is that a deep, dark secret?
Everyone seems to think, and he probably did, he had to pay off the officials, but I was with him 20 years, and during that time I could swear that I never saw him pay anyone a penny of graft.
Well, now, I guess you would probably know better than anybody in the world because you were his secretary, which means you were on the inside of the operation.
Yeah. But Barry Shannon was my uncle. He was very close. He was closer to Mr. Bradley than I.
Mm-hmm.
And what Mr. Bradley did in the way of
He just managed.
he managed.
Uh-huh. And he never was raided?
Yes, he was raided several times, but they was always tipped off, and he had everything hid away. And when they hid everything away, why the guests would sit down and drink tea at the tables and play not gin rummy because it wasn't
whist
euchre
or
whist. That was it. And they would all join in the fun while the inspector from the governor's office would go around and search the place. Not too methodically, but search the place.
They even got rid of the tables, the roulette wheels, and everything?
The tables all folded up and looked like a tea table when they took the layout off of them. And Harry Rutherford can tell you more about where they hid those tables than anybody I know of, because he built the places for them.
But now I have heard, let's just jump ahead while we're talking about the tables. I have heard that when the beach club was ended, when its days were final, when it was finally, that all of the equipment was taken on a barge and sunk in the ocean. Is that right?
I couldn't tell about that. I think that was Mr. Bradley's wish, but what his brother, who's executor, did, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that they were down at another casino down the south end of the county, which was closed later. I really don't know.
But to get back to the gambling, did they gamble for real high stakes?
Yes, and I'll go on to tell you another requirement to be a member. You had to, no ladies were members, only gentlemen were members. Ladies were at all times had to be escorted by a gentleman who was a member.
Mm-hmm.
Because he didn't want any women in the club who might be questionable.
Mm-hmm.
And another requirement for membership was that you could not be in business in Palm Beach, because people who came down from New York, opened a little store, they'd come in and they'd go over there and they'd gamble and lose the money. He'd have to give it back to them. They could prove that they lost the store's money. He'd give them back as much as $2,000 or $3,000 and then stop them.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to take that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as gambling is concerned, the first year I was with him was in 1926. I went to the club in 1927, and I think that was the biggest gambling that they ever had in Monte Carlo or any place else.
How'd it go?
Well, he had a $5,000 limit in Shamanda Fair, and he had a $1,000 limit on his game on a number, on an even money number.
Mm-hmm.
$25 on a single number, where a person would win about $1,000 if he hit the number. It wasn't that he wanted to gamble. His idea of gambling was he didn't want a person to come in there and just gamble and win or lose. He wanted them to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And many a time when a customer would win, well, he'd really be pleased, because they thought he was going to lose so much during the season, the percentage was going to beat him anyway. If he could get some pleasure out of extending his time at the table and being seen and enjoy passing checks back and forth, that was his idea of entertainment. And that's just what it was.
What was the house percentage? Is that known?
Well, in roulette, it's 5 5/19 against the player,
Mm-hmm.
which is rather high.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you bet $100, the house automatically gets $5 and 5/19 of a dollar. But it doesn't follow they're going to get it every play. But in the long run, over a series of plays, that percentage will go to the house. Now, hazard, which is a game of 3 dice. the percentage is only about between 2 and 3%. But the action is about 3 times faster than hazard. They can make three throws of the dice while the ball is spinning around on one play of roulette.
Like turning your inventory.
That's right. And chemin de fer was a game, a French game. It's the equivalent of baccarat. And the people went over to Europe and they learned how to play it, his customers. And so they just insisted he put it down at the club. So he sent over to France and had a Frenchman come over to deal the game, and they played very high stakes. It wasn't a good house game though, because the house got a cut, 5% out of each play, but they had to guarantee the credit.
Oh.
Now when a person lost a roulette, they owed Mr. Bradley the money. He didn't have to pay out money to take that. It was just money they owed him. But if a person lost money at chemin de fer, he guaranteed their credit, and he had to pay the winner what the winner won. And so there was quite a risk there. Although he had very good credit, we had very good line on everybody's credit.
Did he operate any on IOUs?
Oh yes, I'd say 75-80% of the business was credit.
And how much of that did he lose?
He didn't lose much.
He didn't.
Didn't lose much because we'd watch customer. He had one rule down there, which was a very good idea. A person would come down there at the beginning of the season and say, "Mr. Bradley, I don't want to lose over $1,000 a night." And that party could go out and play. And when he lost his $1,000 in the course of the night, no more credit. Mm-hmm. And if they didn't stop him by mistake, they'd let him go over and he'd lose $2,000. He only owed $1,000.
Oh. And
sometimes they would come in and say, "Oh, where's Mr. Bradley? I've lost my $1,000. I want to get my credit extended." And he'd talk to him and say, "Well, no, you said it yourself. You could have any limit you want, but you put $1,000 on yourself. So therefore, tomorrow you come in and pay the $1,000. I'll give you $20,000 if you want to sign a different ticket." And they signed just what they wanted to lose during the night. And he was not responsible for anything lost over there.
Well, now with the $5,000 limit at roulette, nobody broke the bank, huh?
Oh no! As I say, it was $1,000 on a color was another. No, nobody could. You couldn't. The best player that I ever saw down there who had a chance to win was Mr. Young, Robert Young. Oh. He was a real gambler.
Oh, really?
And I never thought a man like he would ever commit suicide, because Mr. Bradley said you never find a suicide with a lottery ticket in his pocket. Uh-huh. And Young was a real gambler. He could stand to win money, because when he came down there and he won, he kept pressing his good luck. Mm-hmm. And he'd go out, he'd win $170,000 one night, and he walked out cold and took the money, but he came back, and in the long run, Mr. Young paid his dues. But he was a real gambler. The average gambler is a person who goes in there and they'll gamble and win a little bit of money and quit. Mm-hmm. And then when they get losing, they'll play and play and play and try to get even. They're always playing for even. Mm-hmm. And those are the people that lose money. I saw David Schulte lose $97,000 at number one table one night, and he was just trying to win dinner money. Hmm. But he got stuck and betting 500, doubling up all around, playing the whole board, and he ended up, and he sat down and wrote Mr. Bradley out a check for the $97,000.
Well, you could lose a lot there as well as win a lot.
Oh yes, you could lose a lot.
Now, Mr. Bradley himself seems to have left a considerable imprint on the town of Palm Beach. There are many people, Mr. James Owens, for example, who will tell you that he was one of the finest men that ever lived, and not only from a standpoint of his operation of the club, the way he operated the club, the honest way in which he operated the club, but also for what he did for the community.
He loved Palm Beach. He just loved it. He said it gave him his livelihood, and it gave him his pleasure. And from what he earned here, he was able to carry on his racing stable and have his farm. And he often told Barry Shannon used to complain about the high taxes we paid, and say he ought to go down and contest. And Mr. Bradley would say, "No, Barry," said, "after all, you can't pay too much tax in Palm Beach." Mm-hmm. And that's the way he felt. And he gave to everything. He was a Catholic, but he gave to every church, Methodist, Bethesda, and all of them. In fact, Charlie Ward tells a story about Mr. Bradley. He said the Methodist Church was in need of an organ, and someone had bought the organ for him, but in the meantime they'd lost their money and they couldn't get it out of storage. So E.B. Donnell, Judge Donnell, he's probably being interviewed too.
Yes.
He went to Mr. Bradley and said he'd take $2,000 to get this organ out of hock, and the church needed it pretty badly. So Mr. Bradley gave Donnell the $2,000, and he went and got the organ and installed it. And Charlie tells that later the preacher was, the minister was up on altar, and he was delivering a tirade against gambling and mentioning the beach club and specifically. So Charlie went around to the back and saw him and said, "Now listen, Reverend, whatever his name was, I don't know his name." He said, "I'm a member of your congregation. I pay my dues. I contribute with what I can afford." And he said, "But there's one thing I can't stand for." He said, "That's you having Colonel Bradley's music back there in the back of your church, and you blasting him in front of the church."
I guess that stopped that, huh?
Yes. And he gave to everything. In fact, he used to like to talk to the people himself and give them money. But as he got older, he used to give me a leeway of giving $20 to anybody that came to the door, no matter what they were, and see if they for this advertisement. A lot of them were bunks, but he said, "Go give them as high as 20, and you go over that, bring them back to see me."
Well, that's like George Goebel would say, you don't hardly find those kind of men no more.
No, you don't. Well, of course, he didn't have income tax in the early days then either.
That's right. That's right.
That hurt the beach club more than anything, income tax.
He did it?
Oh, yes. That wrecked all gambling, big gambling. Because a person doesn't mind losing money if they're earning money. But when they have to dig into their principal, that's a different thing. That stopped the big gambling. Of course, the racketeers, they don't pay no income tax. They're the only gamblers today.
What about the dining facility? Can you tell me what it looked like? What it was?
The club was not, as Harry Redford can probably tell you, the club was not elaborate at all. It was very, very simple. It was white, green carpets, and had good lighting, but not heavy. The lighting was dull. I mean, it was good, but dull. He said that an orange light made a woman's complexion much more pretty than a bright light. So he saw to it that the women's complexions were protected. And the dining room was they could seat 212 people. That was the limit, and that was a big night. We served 212. Sometime they'd serve the 212. Some people would come late. We might go 225 or 230. But of course, he made no money on the dining room. The
gambling rooms never do.
No, he told Gene Bracco was his chef for the days that I was there. And he told Gene he wanted the best food served regardless what it cost. And for him to go to New York each fall and get the menus of all the best restaurants, like in the Plaza and the different ones in New York, and compare whatever their highest price was, to charge that plus 10 cents in the beach club.
Oh.
And he still lost money. But
did he order special foods? Or
they ordered most everything from New York. The meats all came from New York. And the very best food, and he had chefs, good chefs too.
How many did he have in help over there?
Well, altogether, he had about 125 employees, probably a little more than that.
Well, he must have had quite a nut then.
He had a big nut, and it wasn't until about I'd say the middle of February that we cracked the nut.
Oh, really?
That's right.
When did you open?
Well, gradually, the season has extended down here. The last year's the club opened about the first week of January, which was quite early. And it would drag out until the end of sometimes the middle of April, depending upon Easter. If Easter was late, the season would run later.
But it wasn't open till after.
But now I'm not talking about the early days in the club. In the early days in the club, before my time there, he'd open the club, I'd say, about around the latter part of January, and he'd close on the 17th of March. Oh. That was the season then, and after that there was nothing here. But that was before my time.
Do you remember any other stories about him that you'd like to share with us?
There've been a lot of stories told about him. Most of them exaggerated. I'll tell one story that I think to showing how the people have trusted his gambling house. Eddie Moore, who was American, whose family could own American Can at one time, owned American Can, was one of our customers, and he was quite a personal friend of Mr. Bradley's. So he called up one day, and I answered the phone, and he said he knew me as Tom. He said, "Tell Ed I want him to bet $1,000 on the red 5 times at each wheel. And that's 6 tables in the front room, and then call me back and tell me what I've done." So I went over and I told Mr. Bradley what Eddie Moore had said. He said, "Well, it's that guy." He said, "He's a nut." So I called him. I said, "Mr. Bradley said he doesn't like to do that. So he doesn't feel you can be protected." He said, "Did I ask for protection?" He said, "You tell Ed Bradley to go do that for me, and you call me back and tell me what I did." So Mr. Bradley said, "Well, Tom, go out there and take a paper and have him spin number 1 wheel 5 times, and whatever it wins or loses, put out and win 1,000, lose 1,000, and do that to each wheel, and come back and tell me what you did, and then you call Eddie Moore and tell him. So I don't just remember the exact figure, but he won, say, $4,000 or $5,000
Over the telephone.
over the telephone. So I called him. I said, Mr. Moore, Mr. Bradley said to tell you that you won $4,000. Well, tell him to keep it. I'll be over there tonight and collect it. And he did that any number of times. Of course, he didn't like to do that, but for Eddie Moore, he would do it. John Sanford was probably Mr. Bradley's best friend in Palm Beach. He was very, very fond of old John Sanford. And he knew all of the people in Palm Beach, the wealthy people and the social people, but he couldn't associate with them too close because he felt that the time might come when they would break one of the rules of his house, and if they did, he'd have to stop them, and he didn't hesitate to stop them. So he wanted to feel like he was just a little distant, like a commanding officer from the buck privates over him. And while he was on the racetrack, it was a different thing. He sat they went to the clubhouse together and they had dinner together. But as far as Palm Beach is concerned, he only went out to two people's house in Palm Beach for dinner. I understand he knew Mr. Croker quite well. He used to go down there, but that was before my time. And one was John Sanford, but he told John, he said, John, now listen, I don't want anybody else at the table, just you and myself. And Joe Widener's a close friend of his, but he told Mr. Widener too, that he didn't like to have any other guests there because somebody would make a remark, so look, he's entertaining Bradley the gambler, and it would happen to him. So he protected himself all the way around, not only politically, but socially and every other way.
What happened to people who got drunk in the club?
Well, they tried to serve as little liquor as possible. He didn't force liquor on people. If they were getting too much, the waiters and the head waiter would see to it that he didn't get too much. But often, especially during Prohibition, when they brought their own, they had no control over it. They would be called the telephone. And when they went to the telephone, he'd meet them outside the door and say, young man, you're drinking a little too heavy tonight, come back tomorrow, we'll straighten the whole, everything be settled. And the fellows may get unruly. When he did, he was out.
Personally escort him to the door.
That's right. But it was done in a nice manner. They would just call the telephone. The porter would tell them.
Anybody try to cheat over there?
Oh yes. He had a house pretty well protected though. He had good dealers. He could get the best dealers in the United States because he paid good wages. He fed well. That was one thing. He always helped well. And even in my business here, I find that my employees would rather get good food sometimes than a big salary, and they appreciate it. So he had the choice of all the dealers in the United States. He received applications from pretty near all in the country, and he was able to pick. And the dealers, the worst risk was with crooked dealers. But he'd weed them out. We'd weed them out. You could catch them some way or another. Usually the guests would turn them in.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's what tip you off.
I remember once in Tijuana, I had a dealer playing blackjack. I had a dealer proposition me.
Yeah, well, that's what they do.
Said we can win quite a bit of money
that's
here.
The best. That's the easiest way of doing it. But as far as fixing roulette wheel or anything, that was impossible because the wheels were put in the safe just like the money every night.
Oh.
And the wheels and dice were taken off the table at the close by the manager, whoever was Mr. Keogh or Barry Shannon or myself, and put in the envelope, wrapped in paper, and put in the dice the next morning when the club opened. And they were guarded just as carefully as the money was.
How often were the dice changed?
They didn't change them unless we always had other dice that were carefully checked by Mr. Bradley himself as a rule, and in the safe. And if somebody complained the dice weren't running right, all he had to do was ask for a change of dice, and they'd take another set out there and use them. There was nothing wrong. It's just superstition.
Nobody tried to switch dice?
One time, somebody tried to switch dice. We had the Chemin Fair dealer was on the lookout, and a boy dealing the game, whether or not he's crooked, I don't know. But the Chemin Fair dealer, who was just helping out, saw the dice being switched, and the fellow noticed it when they called attention to him. One of the managers called. He took the dice right up, and immediately the fellow he'd won a small amount of money, say $200 or $300. He went and lit right out. But if that Chemin Fair dealer hadn't caught him, he could have got us for about 10 or 15,000. Of course, when he got him around 10, there'd have been somebody else watching the game too. That was a sore spot. They'd always had a good man go over there and watch it.
As soon as the stakes got high, somebody came in.
Somebody's winning too much money. Why they'd send a good lookout over to watch it. That wasn't too often. He used to love, as I say, he loved to see people win. You take Ms. Shearson, Ms. John F. Harris, and Ms. Conroy. They were all people that came in the club, had lunch there 3 or 4 times a week, go back to the casino and play all afternoon. And they played small amounts, and they'd win 50 or lose 50, and they'd end up the season owing Mr. Bradley about 5,000 at most. But they enjoyed the afternoons and the lunches and everything there. And when they won, it was a pleasure to see them win, because it meant they were going to be able to play on, because they only had so much. They had set aside so much money that they were going to use for gambling, and when they lost it, they quit. So if their season extended from the time they wanted to come and when they wanted to leave, that was much the better for us. Speaking of Ms. Shearson, I'll tell you something funny about her. She was a social society, top society leader of Washington society, and she was a good patron of the club, and Mr. Bradley liked her very much. And she came down here, and one winter was quite cold. So she told him, she said, "Mr. Bradley, I can't understand you. You told me this climate down here was pleasant all year round. We've had about 3 weeks of the most bitter cold, and my cold bill has been something enormous this year." So he told her, "So now, Ms. Shearson, don't you worry about that. From now on, I'll take care of your cold bill every year." So after that, he told Harry Redder, he told us that every fall, when we put my coal in, says, "Fill Ms. Shearson, what did I say?
Shearson?
No, it wasn't Ms. Shearson. I'm talking Ms. Slater.
Oh, Slater.
E.F.G. Slater. Fill Ms. Slater's coal bin, and so it cost him about $300 a year to fill her coal bin, but he kept Ms. Slater happy, and she kept everybody else happy.
That was a good investment,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah.
She talked it up.
Oh, sure,
Everybody
she
else
told
in
her.
town hoped
That's
they'd
right.
get cold.
People would go in there and lose. People would go in there and lose $50, and they go out and say they lost $500. That was common occurrence. And sometimes when they win 20, they go out and say they won $200. They exaggerate.
Well, it must have been quite an operation to look back on.
It sure was.
I bet you enjoyed it.
It was a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work, though. Many a time I'd open up at 1 o'clock, and then I'd have to be there at 12 and go get to the bank. And I'd go home in the afternoon, take a nap, and then I'd be there till 4 o'clock the next morning or later.
Oh.
Because that was during the high season.
How much of a bank did you carry?
We carried about, during the height of the season, which would be around the middle of 1st of March, we'd carry around $300,000 in cash.
Oh, really?
Well, we'd cash up plenty $100,000 in checks every day. And the reason for that was people would lose, they would give us a check. If they won, they'd draw out cash. And we cashed a lot of checks just as a bank. I mean, for people like Joe Kennedy come in and wanted $500, he'd write out his check and we'd give him $500. He was a patron of ours, too. I'll tell you a story about him, too, about Mr. Kennedy, the president's father. He came in one night and he won $500. So Mr. Bradley gave him a $500 bill. And he told said good night. So the next morning, a couple nights later, Mr. Kennedy came in and said, "Bradley," says, "you know that $500 I won from you the other night?" He said, "You got it back anyway." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I went to church the next morning, and I was reaching in my pocket to put a bill in St. Edward's Church in the collection, and I meant to put a $50 bill in, and I put the $500 bill in my mistake." And he says, "You know good and well you own the church," and said, "You probably had to turn that over to you just as soon as he picked it out of the box."
That's wonderful.
That really happened.
You know, there grows up an aura of a legendary aura around such a man.
There is. Well, I mean, around the race, his connections on the racetrack are just as legendary as there's many a new thing he started on the racetrack. That's one thing about Mr. Bradley. He was always willing to experiment. He had quite a few novelties over there at the beach club that he really put into for the first one put in practice. The marker boxes where when a person would buy some chips to play with and wouldn't pay cash, they'd put a marker up, and they used to put it on the rim of the wheel. And of course, sometimes the person would knock the markers over, and they'd all get mixed up. So he thought the idea of a little marker box, and another reason for that, they had a slot in it so that they could twist the box around and show the party if he won how much he was in the box or how much loser, and then he could see old $500. They put a little chip in there, or 3 of them, $300, and different prices from different colors. And they could turn that box so that nobody else could see, because the man's wife might come in and see he was in the box for about $500, and she'd want to go home because they'd lost enough. So that it could be twisted so that they could show it to the party and not show everybody in the place.
That's a good business.
Yeah.
Good business. What other things what other innovations do you
Well, Harry probably could tell you more about. Well, the innovation of hiding all those tables and turning them into a tea party house. One time, one of the governors then came down to examine the place, and Mrs. Slater knew about it. And as she was going out the door, she said loud enough so the governor's man could hear it. Well, I think this is the most outrageous thing I ever had. I came down to Florida, and I'm never coming back to Palm Beach anymore if they're going to do things like this to me. They close this place up. So he's taking it back to the governor.
Well, sir, you've been very generous of your time. I didn't mean to take as much of this.
Well,
and we could probably go on for an hour or so, but I know you're a busy man.
Well, I am a little busy. This is my payday, and I think they're all out there in the kitchen waiting for the money.
And one of these days, maybe I'll come back and we'll do a second installment.
Well, I'd like to.
Thank you very much.
You're entirely welcome.